අද්විතීය 200 Mbps ස්පීඩ් එකකින් ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ වේගවත්ම සහ පුළුල්තම හෝම් බ්‍රෝඩ්බෑන්ඩ් සම්බන්ධතාවය වන SLT මොබිටෙල් දේශීය ෆයිබර් බලවේගය ඔබත් අදම අත්විඳින්න.
හරිම සුළුයි.
Tonight on First at 9 this Saturday the 26th of August 2023. Renewable energy. Sri Lanka's locational potential for power generation by offshore wind is at a staggering 56 gigawatts, reveals the World Bank and the IFC. Lessons from crisis. State Minister of Finance highlights government's commitment in achieving growth via non-debt creating inflows.
The government will establish new economic zones across the country to bolster inflows of FDI, essential to unlocking Sri Lanka's potential.
Alarming. Hydropower generation to be at risk if the drought continues, warns the CEB. Government aims at increasing compensation to affected farmers. Slashed. The central bank has issued an order reducing interest rates on lending facilities.
ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දෙනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසින් ලබාගත හැක. Rhino Cement Roofing Sheets. හොඳම මෙලට කල් පවතින වහරයක්.
This is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to AdaDerana First at 9. I'm Aditya Drisingha joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and around the world. Now in your top story tonight, the World Bank and the International Finance Corporation estimate Sri Lanka's locational potential for power generation via offshore wind at 56 gigawatts or 56,000 megawatts. In their offshore wind roadmap compiled for Sri Lanka, they highlight northern, western and southeastern areas of Sri Lanka as three potential areas suitable for offshore wind development, highlighting that there are technical and economic challenges and risks which can make Sri Lanka's offshore wind opportunity less attractive to investors and project developers. The World Bank and the IFC recommended that the Sri Lankan government should take a proactive role in planning the delivery of offshore wind projects in order to reduce the risk to investors, making the opportunity more attractive to help reduce costs. The offshore wind roadmap for Sri Lanka was launched at the Ministry of Power and Energy yesterday. According to Subject Minister Kanchana Wijesekara, it was launched with the financial and technical assistance from the World Bank, World Bank's Energy Sector Management Assistance Program, World Bank's Blue Economy Program and the International Finance Corporation. As per the offshore wind roadmap, Sri Lanka has good conditions for offshore wind and locational potential is estimated at 56 gigawatts, which includes 27 gigawatts of fixed offshore wind in shallow waters less than 50 meters and 29 gigawatts of floating offshore wind in deeper waters between 50 meters and 1 kilometer. The report noted northern, western and southeastern areas of Sri Lanka as three potential areas suitable for offshore wind development. The report highlights some of the main drivers for developing offshore wind in Sri Lanka, which includes decarbonization, as Sri Lanka has set a goal of 70% of electricity generation from renewable sources in 2030 and to achieve carbon neutrality in electricity generation by 2050. The report stated that offshore wind has the potential to provide large-scale contributions to help achieve the government's decarbonization targets, especially in the longer term. It also noted that Sri Lanka's 50-plus gigawatts of offshore wind resources offer an abundant domestic supply of energy and could help improve the country's energy security. The World Bank and the IFC is of the view that the development of offshore wind could provide a substantial contribution to the economy, adding that over the lifetime of a 500-megawatt offshore wind farm, the Sri Lankan economy could benefit from approximately $570 million of gross value added through local investment and employment. In terms of energy exports, an electrical interconnector between Sri Lanka and India could benefit both countries, and with the addition of large-scale offshore wind, Sri Lanka could become an energy exporter, particularly at times where supply exceeds local demand. The sale of power to consumers connected to the Indian grid or Bangladesh could also be considered and would open up offtake possibilities. However, the report stated that although Sri Lanka has a clear opportunity to deploy offshore wind generation, there are more important technical and economic challenges and risks which can make the opportunity less attractive to investors and project developers.
As a result, they recommend that the government should take a proactive role in planning and delivery of offshore wind projects in order to reduce the risk to investors, making the opportunity more attractive and help reduce costs. In a bid to overcome these challenges, the World Bank and the IFC recommend a set of actions that need to be fulfilled in 7 years. In 2023, they recommended Sri Lanka to set the vision by establishing offshore wind targets. They also recommend Sri Lanka Sustainable Energy Authority and Sri Lanka Electricity Board to integrate offshore wind into the long-term generation expansion plan and long-term transmission development plan. Between 2023 and 2025, the World Bank and the IFC recommend preparing pathfinder projects, which should include spatial planning and stakeholder consultation, wind, seabed and environmental data collection, industrial engagement and designing of tender competition. Between 2024 and 2026, they recommend establishing frameworks and de-risk via identification and implementation of regulatory updates, the launch of competitive tender processes and enabling of long-term bankable power purchasing agreements to be offered. Further, they also recommend in creating de-risking instruments to reduce cost. Finally, during the period between 2026 and 2030, the World Bank and the IFC recommend delivering offshore wind projects and infrastructure through port and grid upgrades, including the India Interconnector. They also recommend to support the construction of pathfinder projects and plan future fixed and floating offshore wind projects beyond 2030.
Now, the State Minister of Finance, Shehan Semasinghe, says the government is committed in achieving economic growth via non-debt inflows through measures such as trade integration and higher levels of tourism earnings. Addressing a webinar organized by the International Chamber of Commerce themed Sri Lanka, Asia's emerging investment destination, the State Minister said Sri Lanka aims to complete the debt restructuring process by the final quarter of this year.
Whilst there remains a long way to go, it sets up an enticing opportunity for investors to obtain first-mover advantage in a market that is primed for a sustained, high-quality growth over the medium to long term. Sri Lanka intends to conclude its debt restructuring process during the final quarter of 2023, in line with the IMF's first review, which is due in September this year. The government intends to position Sri Lanka to grow through non-debt creating inflows. Through trade agreements, Sri Lanka is also addressing supply-side bottlenecks to boost productivity. The government is opening up government-owned land for productive commercial activities. Capital market restrictions are gradually being eased as the external imbalances get resolved. Public investments will be more focused and targeted in line with fiscal consolidation efforts. These will be channeled to sectors with the highest returns, such as digitization, including the unique digital identity, education and training, healthcare, renewable energy development, and so on. Accordingly, larger investments and infrastructure will need to be financed by the private sector through public-private partnerships and other investment vehicles, creating an important opportunity for investment at scale in Sri Lanka. The government aims to create greater trade liberalization, which is critical to attract investment and boost productivity growth. Our aim is to consolidate an economy that is export-oriented, competitive and sustainable, and shift towards a private sector-driven economy. To do so, the government will establish new economic zones across the country to bolster inflows of FDI, essential to unlocking Sri Lanka's potential. In moving forward, Sri Lanka recognizes economic, social and environmental potential of the blue-green economy. Towards this end, initiatives are being taken to fast-track our transition.
Now, the Minister of Agriculture, Mahinda Amaraveera, said steps will be taken to present a paper to the Cabinet on increasing the compensation to the farmers affected by the drought. Meanwhile, the Ceylon Electricity Board stated that if the drought conditions continue, hydropower generation from the available water resources will be limited to only 4 weeks.
Due to the ongoing drought condition in the country, the authorities took a decision to halt the operations of the water distribution centre that supplies water to the Tangol and Runner towns in the southern province. This decision was taken due to the drying up of water levels in the Kattakadu reservoir. Kattakadu reservoir is also the supply of water to the Tangol hospital. However, steps were taken following a cabinet decision yesterday to release water from the Chandrika lake to the Kattakadu reservoir. The water distribution was inspected today by Minister of Agriculture Mahinda Amaraveera. Due to the drying up of water resources in the country as a result of the drought, the Ceylon Electricity Board meanwhile stated that hydropower generation has reduced by 15%. The CEB stated that if the drought conditions continue, hydropower generation from the available water resources will be limited to only 4 weeks. Meanwhile, in the Hambantota district, pepper cultivation in areas of Middeniya, Torokoleyaya and Murungasyaya have been affected due to the lack of water. In Ambilipitiya, the drying up of the Galbuku oil has affected cinnamon, pepper, coconut, banana and vegetable cultivations in the area. Taking the impact of the drought conditions into account, Minister of Agriculture Mahinda Amaravira said that steps will be taken to increase the compensation to be granted to the affected farmers.
මිනිසුන්ට කොහොමද ලොකු හානියක් වෙලා තියෙනවා කියන එක අපිට පිළිගන්න සිද්ධ වෙලා තියෙනවා. දැනට සම්පූර්ණ මූලික වාර්තා අරගෙන කොච්චර ප්‍රමාණය කියන එකයි ඒ වගේම මේ ෆක්සේරුවයි අරගෙන මම කැබිනට් මණ්ඩලයට වාර්තාවක් ඉදිරිපත් කරනවා. ඊට පස්සේ තමයි ඉතින් මුදල් වෙන් කරලා ගන්න වෙන්නේ.
Now, Minister of Foreign Affairs President's Council Ali Sabri highlighted that the devolution of power will incorporate minor communities into the government's administration in a bid to increase inclusivity. Speaking to Indivari Amuwatta during our current affairs program at Hyde Park on AdaDerana 24, the Foreign Minister said the power devolution is safe except for several concerns, including the devolution of police powers. Ali Sabri also noted that inviting the diaspora to Sri Lanka without being prisoners of the past will help attract more tourism earnings and foreign investments to the areas in the north and the east of the country.
What is your opinion about the 13th Amendment and assurances on implementing the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, and from a legal perspective also, the devolution of powers and managing India's interests in Sri Lanka?
I mean, devolving power, we shouldn't be too much worried. But in devolving power, you are not devolving power to outsiders, you are devolving powers to the Sri Lankans. So some people think that you give that power to a particular community, the whole community will work against the country. That's not true. There are Tamils who are more patriotic than so many other Sinhalese. So therefore, we can't paint everybody with the same brush. Yes, LTT, we had a problem, but all Tamils are not LTT. So therefore, I think devolving power is important in a meaningful manner, and Supreme Court has already ruled devolving power on a provincial council level is not a threat to the unitary state of the country. So within the unitary state, we must devolve the power. But there are some concerns which we will anyway. The foreign policy is not for the provincial council. That has to be with the central government. Defense is for the central government. And then police powers, I personally also has a little bit of concern about it, because already people are saying police is politicized. Leave aside the Tamil part of it, the northernist part of it. Do you want 9 chief ministers to have their own police forces and to run the police like their private army? That's a concern for Sri Lanka. So that we need to have further discussion and some sort of an assurance that it will not be misused. But subject to that, all the rest of it, I feel devolution of power is a good way of bringing everybody into the governance and get the Tamils and the Muslims and the minorities to feel that they are also part of the process.
There has been questions about the majority's fears, also about the minorities receiving a special focus about their rights, and the minorities have continued to feel disregarded over the years. So how do we incorporate the concept of a Sri Lankan identity and bring communities together and look at developing our industries like tourism and bringing other countries to support Sri Lanka as a nation?
Future depends on our ability to go ahead as a united Sri Lankan identity. It's important we must create that conducive environment for all of us. What we are doing is, at best, living in the past. We all have become prisoners of the past. We all doubt everybody. They think that if it is from another community, they are here to break our country. That's not the case. There are so many people who have worked for this country and work together. If you do it properly, I think tourism and things like that have a lot of potential. I feel our target of 5 million tourists by 2030 is easily achievable with a massive Indian population traveling. India, out of 1.4 billion people, about 200 million have started to travel. For them, Sri Lanka offers a unique, beautiful destination. China, Japan, and we always had this big tourists coming from Europe and Britain, and our own diaspora in England and Canada and Australia. So we have a very captive tourist market if we properly manage it. And if we connect our Sri Lankan diaspora with their people in Northern East, investment could come there, visitors could come there. So there is a lot of opportunity. The most of the Tamils whom I feel, at least the older generation, they are a little worried, they are a little concerned about what happened to them in 1983 and thereafter. But If you ask them, vast majority of them, they love this country. They think this is our country. So we must produce a situation where everybody is invited here without living in hatred. Only a minority in different communities want this. Vast majority of the Sri Lankans don't care about their race or religion. They all treat Sri Lankans as Sri Lankans and human beings. That is our spirit, and we must build on that.
Now, in more local developments, the chairman of the University Grants Commission emphasized that if the regulatory right of the state university system is withdrawn from the University Grants Commission, it will be the end of the higher education system in the country. The chairman made these remarks speaking at the COPE committee meeting.
මෙතන තියෙනවානේ මේ පුද්ගලික විශ්වවිද්‍යාල නියාමනය කරන්න අයිතියක් නැහැ කියන එක මේ විශ්වවිද්‍යාල ප්‍රතිපාදන කොමිසමට. ඒකට දැනට පෞද්ගලික විශ්වවිද්‍යාල නියාමනය කරන්නේ කොහෙන්ද?
රාජ්‍ය නොවන උසස් අධ්‍යාපන අංශය එඩියුකේෂන් මිනිස්ට්‍රි එකේ යටතේම තියෙන්නේ.
ලංකාව තියෙන්නේ ඕගොල්ලන් ලයිසන් දීපු අයනේ.
ඔව්.
එතකොට දැන්
අනිත් ඒවාට ප්‍රොවිෂන්ස් නැහැ. මේ කියන්නේ මිනිස්ට්‍රි එකට හරිවත් UGC එකටවත් ප්‍රොවිෂන්ස් නැහැ කියන එක තමයි අපිට දැනුම් දීලා තියෙන්නේ.
ඒක බරපතල ප්‍රශ්නයක් නේ ලේකම්තුමා.
පාරවල බැලුවොත් එම ලෝකේ තියෙන ජනප්‍රිය සන්නාමවල විශ්වවිද්‍යාල නම් ගහලා තියෙනවා. ණය අරගෙන කනකරු ගස් තියලා මේ ළමයට උගන්වලා ඒ මෙකැනික්ස් ඔෆ් මෙටීරියල් කියන සබ්ජෙක්ට් එකේ ළමයා දන්නේ නැහැ. ඒ ළමයාට රස්සාවක් දෙන්න බෑ කියලා කිව්වා. මේ ඉංජිනේරින්ග් වල මූලික දේවල් උගන්වලා නැහැ කියලා.
මං හිතන්නේ ලේකම්තුමා මේක තවදුරටත් අපි පරක්කු කරන්න නරකයි.
උපාධියක් ඇතුලේ ඒ දැනුම ලබා දීලා නැත්තම් උපාධිය ප්‍රතික්ෂේප වෙනවා නම්
ඒක හොරකම.
විශ්වවිද්‍යාල ප්‍රතිපාදන කොමිෂන් සභාව රාජ්‍ය නොවන විශ්වවිද්‍යාලයක් ආරම්භ කරන අවස්ථාවේදී ඒ සම්බන්ධයෙන් පුළුල් විමර්ශනයක් සිදු කරලා අවසානයේදී තමයි ඒ ආයතනවලට උපාධියක් පිරිනමන්න අවස්ථාව ලංකාව ඇතුලේ ලබා දුන්නේ. නමුත් අවාසනාවකට 2012 දී ඒ විශ්වවිද්‍යාල ප්‍රතිපාදන කොමිෂන් සභාවට තියලා තිබිච්ච බලතල අතිවිශේෂ ගැසට් නිවේදනයකින් එය ලබා ගත්තා. ඒ ලබාගත්තේ අමාත්‍යාංශයට. උපාධි පිරිනමන අවස්ථාව පිරිනැමුවට පස්සේ ඒක හරියට ක්‍රියාත්මක වෙනවද කියලා බැලීම ඔය නියාමනය ලංකාවේ බිඳුවයි. හැබැයි ඒකෙන් අදහස් වෙන්නේ අපේ ලංකාවේ රාජ්‍ය නොවන විශ්වවිද්‍යාල පද්ධතිය හොඳ නෑ කියලා. එහෙම මතයක් යවන්නත් හොඳ නෑ. ඊටාම හොඳයි. නමුත් මේ වගේ අපහසුතා ඇති වෙන්නේ නියාමනයක් නැති හින්දා. එතකොට දැන් ওই තත්ත්වය ඇති වුණා නම් රාජ්‍ය විශ්වවිද්‍යාලයකට ඒක බරපතල තත්ත්වයක්. එතකොට අපි මේ රාජ්‍ය විශ්වවිද්‍යාල පද්ධතිය බේරගෙන ඉන්න එක තමයි දැන් අපෙන් ගන්න යන්නේ. එතකොට මම මේක මේ වාර්තා කිරීම සඳහායි කියන්නේ ඒක ගත්තොත් රාජ්‍ය විශ්වවිද්‍යාල වලින් ඒක උසස් අධ්‍යාපනයේ අවසානයේ. ආයි අපිට මේක කරෙක්ට් කරන්න අවස්ථාවක් එන්නේ නැහැ.
දැන් ඉන්නේ BOI එකේ රෙජිස්ටර් වෙලා, කම්පැනිස් ඇක්ට් එකේ රෙජිස්ටර් වෙලා අපේ අමාත්‍යාංශ වලින් කිසිම සම්බන්ධයක් නැහැ ඒකට. ඉතින් ඒකට දැන් ગેප් එකක් තියෙනවා. අත් වශයෙන්ම ඒකට අපි এডুকেෂන් හයි এডুকেෂන් ඇක්ට් එකට හරි ඒකට දාන්න ඕනේ කම්පැනි රෙජිස්ට්‍රාර්ට යන්න ඉස්සර ක්ලියරන්ස් ගැනීමේ ක්‍රමවේදයක්.
මෙතන අපි මොනවා කිව්වත් අපිට තියෙන්නේ විශ්වාසයේ ප්‍රශ්නයක් තමයි මේ රටේ තියෙන්නේ. අධ්‍යාපනය ගැන විතරක් නෙමෙයි සෞඛ්‍ය ගැන. නෑ පබ්ලිසිටි එක විතරක් නෙමෙයි. ලාවට සලකන්න එපා මේක. හරිද? මේ රටේ මොකද why isn't in foreign investment coming? trust issue එකක් තියෙනවා. ඉතින් මම කියන්නේ අපි හැමදාම කතා කරන්නේ ලෝකේ හොඳම අධ්‍යාපන ක්‍රමය, ලෝකේ හොඳම සෞඛ්‍ය ක්‍රමය, වීසා පොලිම ගිහිල්ලා බැලුවොත් නේ බලන්න වෙන්නේ ඒක ඇත්තද බොරුද කියලා.
Now, the leader of the opposition, Sajith Premadasa, claimed that against a backdrop where the country has collapsed in all sectors, the nation has become a playground for the powerful. Speaking at an event today, opposition leader further unveiled the ongoing scam in the printing of driver's license, highlighting that against this backdrop, the development of the country cannot be assured.
හැම අතකින්ම අපි අවධානමට ලක් වෙනවා. දේශපාලන පැත්තෙන්, ආරක්ෂක පැත්තෙන්, භූදේශපාලනයේ පැත්තෙන්, සෞඛ්‍ය පැත්තෙන්, අධ්‍යාපන පැත්තෙන්, කෘෂිකාර්මික පැත්තෙන්, කාර්මික පැත්තෙන් මේ වගේ අවදානම් තත්ත්වයක් තිබෙන මොහොතක අපේ රට බලවතුන්ගේ කෙලි බිමක් බවට පත් වෙමින් පවතී. අහවල් රටට මේ භූමි භාගය, මේ බහුජාතික සමාගමට මේ ව්‍යාපාරය Tamanට හිතු ආකාරයට පොදු ජනතාවගේ සම්පත් කුණු කොල්ලට විකුණන අපේ අභිමානයක් වෙන්දේසි කරන මහා පරාජිත යුගයකයි. අද අපි ඩ්‍රයිවිං ලයිසන් එක print කරගන්න බැරි රටක කොහොමද කියන්නේ අහවල් අවුරුද්දේ අපි ගොඩ එනවයි කියලා. එක වෙලාවක ගජමිතුරු සමාගමකට ලබා දෙනවා print කරන්නයි කියලා. තවත් වෙලාවක කියනවා නෑ හමුදාව හොඳයි මේ වැඩේ කරන්නයි කියලා. ආපහු මේක යන්න ඕන අර පෞද්ගලික සමාගමටයි කියලා. ඩ්‍රයිවිං ලයිසන් print කරන්නටත් අපේ රටේ අද මගඩියක් ක්‍රියාත්මක. මේ මගඩිය ඇස්සේ දූෂිතයෝ කෝටි ප්‍රකෝටි ගණන් මුදල් උපයනවා.
For your business news, join us on the other side of this short commercial break.
ගොඩමඩ පෙරලි කරන බලපුළුවන්කාරයා මහින්ද්‍රා යුවෝ ටීමෝ වෙතින්. වැඩම ගොඩයි ගොඩම තමයි ස්වරාජ් ට්‍රැක්ටර් ටීමෝ වෙතින්.
Welcome back. Now in your top business story tonight, the Central Bank of Sri Lanka has issued an order reducing the interest rates on lending products of all licensed commercial and specialized banks, with effect from yesterday. Accordingly, the interest rates on pawning facilities, pre-arranged temporary overdrafts, credit card advances, and new and existing Sri Lankan rupee-denominated lending products have been subjected to the reduction.
Issuing an order pursuant to the provisions of the Monetary Law Act No. 58 of 1949 as amended, the Central Bank of Sri Lanka initially highlighted that in the recent past, several policy measures were taken to reduce the market interest rates, including the reduction of the central bank's policy interest rates and the statutory reserve ratio. However, the country's premier monetary authority noted that despite the considerable easing of monetary conditions, interest rates pertaining to the lending products of certain financial institutions continue to remain excessively high, posing severe challenges to individuals and businesses. Accordingly, via the order, the Monetary Board issued key directives regarding the interest rates applicable on Sri Lankan rupee-denominated lending products of licensed commercial banks and licensed specialized banks. The central bank mandated interest rates on pawning facilities to 18% per annum with immediate effect. Meanwhile, interest rates on pre-arranged temporary overdrafts were ordered to be reduced to 23% per annum, while interest rates on credit card advances were directed to be reduced to 28% per annum commencing from the next billing cycle. The order by the central bank also directs every licensed bank to reduce the annual nominal interest rate applicable for all new and existing rupee-denominated lending products by at least 250 basis points by the 31st of October 2023. Further, the Monetary Board orders every licensed bank to reduce the annual nominal interest rate by a further 100 basis points by the 31st of December 2023 in comparison to the interest rate that prevailed as at the 31st of September 2023. However, those orders exclude the previously mentioned pawning facilities and the overdraft and credit card facilities and any other categories subsequently determined by the Monetary Board of the Central Bank. The central bank went on to highlight that if any rupee-denominated lending product as at the date of the order or any time subsequent is 13.5% or lower, it shall not be mandatory to give effect to the previously outlined reduction requirement, while consequently stating that such banks shall not increase the rates of the lending products from the level maintained as at the date of the order. Emphasizing on the penal interest, the CBSL stated that all licensed commercial banks will reduce the rates charged on all lending products, including credit card facilities already granted, to a level not exceeding 200 basis points per annum for an amount in excess of an approved limit or in arrears during the overdue period with immediate effect.
Now, the chairman of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, Duminda Hulangamu, called on the entrepreneurs in the country to change the way in which they conduct business activities in a bid to survive during these challenging times. Addressing an event in Colombo, Hulangamu said Sri Lanka still has a long way to go in terms of stabilizing the economy further.
The 34th anniversary of the Container Transport Owners Association was held last evening under the patronage of Minister of Ports, Shipping and Aviation Nimal Siripala de Silva and Minister of Power and Energy Kanchana Wijesekara.
We have achieved what I refer to as a relative stability, both in terms of the economy, socially and politically. But we have a long way to go. We have not yet resolved the problem. If we do not go on the reform path, on the reform process, there is no future for Sri Lanka. We lived on subsidies. Both our consumption and capital expenditure, the government spent, was based on subsidies. We must get back to a pre-COVID economic situation. So we are having challenges, not only the Sri Lankan side, we are having challenges both the external side and the local side. So as entrepreneurs, what I want to tell you all, you will have to change your business. You'll have to reduce cost, you have to go for integration, you'll have to rationalize, you have to merge companies, you have to go for backward integration, forward integration.
නියඟයක් පැවතුනත් අද අපේ කාංචන ඇමතිතුමාට පුළුවන් වෙලා තියෙනවා ලයිට් කපන්න නැතුව මුළු රටම ලයිට් දෙන්න. ඉතින් ඒක කවුරුත් අපි අගය කරන්නට ඕන. අපි අවශ්‍ය තීන්දුව අවශ්‍ය වෙලාවට අරගෙන මේ රටේ ආර්ථිකය සකස් කිරීමේ අභියෝගය අපි බාර අරන් තියෙනවා.
Now in your latest corporate updates, Dinuka Dilhan Pereira has been designated as the new chairman of the Mercantile Investments and Finance PLC. Meanwhile, Aruna Christopher Malinka Fernando, who served as a non-executive independent director of SoftLogic Finance PLC, retired from his position with effect from the 13th of August. With that, let's take a look at the latest corporate updates in the island.
Dinuka Dilhan Pereira has been designated as the new chairman of the Mercantile Investments and Finance PLC with effect from yesterday. As per Section 7.8 of the listing rules of the Colombo Stock Exchange, he does not hold any shares of the company. Pereira was appointed to the Board of Mercantile Investments and Finance PLC as the non-executive independent director with effect from the 21st of February 2020. Meanwhile, non-independent and non-executive director of Associate Motorways Capital Leasing, Peter Andrew Mackenzie's resignation has been approved by the Department of Supervision of Non-Bank Financial Institutions of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. Accordingly, his resignation will be effective from the 11th of October 2023. In the meantime, Aruna Christopher Malinka Fernando, who served as a non-executive independent director of SoftLogic Finance PLC, retired from his position with effect from the 13th of August. The company confirmed that he does not hold any shares in the company as at the 13th of August.
And with that, we wrap up tonight's edition of AdaDerana First at 9. Stay in touch with us on www.adaderana.lk for the latest developments around the clock. Thank you. Have a great night.
For news and information you can trust 24 hours a day, visit AdaDerana.lk.